Events are designed to bring people together. They spark ideas and they drive business outcomes. Yet, the behind the scenes process to procure goods and services for these events can often they can be riddled with inefficiencies, confusion, and hidden costs. And when procurement becomes a stumbling block rather than a streamlined path, it erodes the financial health of an event. This reality hits associations and corporate planners alike. And you want your conference, trade show, or meeting to shine. But the last minute vendor changes, opaque pricing structures, or just clumsy contract negotiations, these things can all instantly blow up your budget. Major consultancy firms such as McKinsey, PwC, and EY have extensively documented the impact of poor procurement practices in various industries, revealing that many organizations lose between 3 to 4% of external spend just purely through inefficient processes, or they lack oversight or hidden fees. Apply that to a sizable event with $1 million budget, and you're looking at losing tens of thousands of dollars right off the bat. And on the event side, industry sources like TSNN and PCMA, they highlight how exhibitors frequently cite escalating service charges, ranging from venue constraints to expensive vendor markups. And they're all a prime reason that they question ROI on shows. Put simply, an inefficient procurement strategy can lead to budget overruns, lost revenue, and even reputational damage when service quality suffers. And in this module, we'll explore the real impact of inefficient procurement in event planning, differentiating between the direct costs, those line items that you can see on in the invoice, and the indirect or hidden costs that drain resources without a real clear paper trail. We'll also examine how gray territory within RFP, the vague or overly flexible sections, they can either cause scope creep and unanticipated budget hits or allow you to innovate. Leveraging data from McKinsey, EY, and a major event case study, we're going to dive into how better oversight, standardized processes, and effective pipeline velocity tracking can prevent these losses. This is culminating in an approach we'll call deal progression modules, a structured but flexible method to keep every vendor negotiation on time, on budget, and ready to pivot if a deal stalls. And ultimately, the goal is to show that sound procurement is not just about saving money, it's about protecting the participant experience and ensuring that suppliers deliver maximum value and creating the agility you need to adapt to an event environment where deadlines and execution are above all else. And by the end of this, you'll understand not only how to plug cost leaks, but also how to build a more resilient pipeline of vendor deals and relationships so that your team and your budget can just breathe easier. The financial toll of inefficient procurement. The first item that we're going to talk about, the scale of the problem. You can't manage what you can't see. And when sourcing is scattered, like multiple RFPs and email threads, no standardized process to track negotiations, little visibility into vendor proposals, organizations lose money in overt and subtle ways. Like I said earlier, McKinsey research shows that many companies waste 3 to 4% of total external spend on inefficiencies, transaction mistakes, and non-compliance, and what they call value leakage. And let's drill into that more. If an organization hosting multiple conferences each year collectively spends $5 million on venues, AV logistics, and so on, that leakage can exceed $150,000 annually, just from avoidable inefficiencies. And EY's analysis of corporate event travel found that deploying automated processes and digital booking tools can yield an 18 to 22% reduction in related ticket costs. The savings primarily emerged from eliminating duplications, manual errors, and last-minute rate hikes due to delayed purchasing. But what is the lesson here? A few well-targeted improvements can free up a significant chunk of budget for other priorities like better attendee engagement or more robust on-site experiences. Event organizers feeling the pinch. In the event sector specifically, numerous surveys highlight how budget pressures and rising service costs have become top concerns. That 88% of exhibit marketers name budget management as their biggest worry, with 82% specifically blaming ballooning show service fees, such as drayage or exclusive vendor pricing. The industry is often criticized for unnecessary hurdles, from mandatory in-house AV packages at high markups to stiff cancellation policies that trap organizers with penalty fees if a sponsor pulls out or attendance doesn't meet projections. TSNN published a rising cost feature in which multiple exhibitors complained about discovering mid-contract that they didn't actually have a comprehensive package. They had to pay extra for electricity, forklift usage, cleaning staff, or overtime labor, costs that, in their view, should have been clearly stated in the RFP or contract. For example, one exhibitor was blindsided by a 10% administrative fee tacked onto nearly every service labeled miscellaneous in the final invoice. Because these unexpected fees appeared late, the exhibitor had no choice but to pay. But if the event's procurement staff had systematically clarified the scope and locked in transparent pricing, they might have saved thousands. Inefficient procurement in events means failing to shop around enough to get competitive quotes, failing to specify details so that vendors can't slip in hidden fees, or failing to finalize decisions early enough to prevent rush charges. It also involves not having a plan if the preferred vendor is suddenly unavailable or overpriced. The net impact is a constant risk of budget overruns. As many planners discover, once you realize the true cost, it's often too late to pivot. Direct versus indirect costs, understanding the full scope. Not all losses are obvious. Some show up as a line item on your spreadsheet, like a $5,000 penalty for late furniture orders, while others silently they chip away at staff productivity or event quality. Both hamper the event's financial position. Direct costs, the visible line items. Direct costs are the easiest to spot because they're literally on the invoice or contract. These are hidden or junk fees. Service charges, administrative fees, pull prep, restock labor, or mandatory gratuities that add 10 to 25% to the baseline prices. Studies have shown that these surprise costs can push an event budget up by an extra 27%. And lack of clarity in RFPs allows vendors to slip in these fees without the organizer realizing it until the final invoice. Missed early bird discounts. If your procurement cycle drags on, you might fail to book a venue before its special rate deadline. Also, if you only realize you need more items rigged or better Wi-Fi speeds at the last minute, you could pay premiums 50% or higher than if you had planned months in advance. Penalties for late charges or cancellations. If an association sends out RFPs too late or takes weeks to decide, they may lose the venue hold. Another contract might take its place at that time of the year. It's always a balancing act between timeline, material, location. In the situation of a venue hold, you might have to scramble for second choice options at higher rates. Or if an internal sponsor drops out, the contract's cancellation clause might force the organizer to pay large attrition fees. Without proactive pipeline management, these scenarios become more likely. Another thing to talk about is rush fees. Something as simple as a graphic order might cost 15 to 20% more if placed within 2 weeks of the event, because the vendor charges expedited labor. And if the procurement team only finalizes details days before showtime, rush fees become unavoidable, and they're huge. Indirect costs, the hidden drains. Indirect costs are less obvious, but often as damaging. The first thing to talk about is labor inefficiencies and rework. Poor procurement structures lead to staff repeating tasks, chasing down quotes, or renegotiating terms that were initially vague. McKinsey found that across industries, procurement teams can spend 30% more time on error correction when processes aren't standardized. That wasted labor could have been spent on crucial attendee engagement initiatives or sponsor acquisition. This then leads into missed opportunities and lost time. A slow or chaotic RFP process can cause planners to lose out on prime vendors or special packaging deals. In a seller's market, as is often the case for popular conference dates, the best venues book up quickly. And slow approval cycles leave you with suboptimal choices that just might cost more in the end. The next thing, quality shortfalls. If your staff is so bogged down by disorganized procurement that they ignore vendor vetting, you might end up with subpar AV or unreliable F&B. The resulting negative attendee experiences, they're going to affect your event's reputation. And reputational damage can translate into fewer sponsor commitments or exhibitor signups next year. An intangible but real financial cost over time. Scope creep. Vague RFPs or loosely structured contracts open the door to incremental requests that balloon the budget. A keynote speaker demands better staging last minute. You're forced to upgrade a lighting rig, or an exhibitor needs custom branding on the signage. While each addition might seem minor, collectively, they can add tens of thousands of dollars, plus the headache of rushed project adjustment. Okay. Why does this matter? I hope you picked it, but I'm going to tell you anyways. Because event planners typically fight to keep margins in check while delivering a standout experience. Plain and simple. Direct cost overages blow your budget immediately, whereas indirect inefficiencies, they gradually sap your resources. Focusing on both, though, is critical if your organization wants to preserve profitability and keep your staff from burnout. Gray territory in RFPs, cost risk versus flexibility. When drafting RFPs, many planners wonder how detailed to be. Overprescribe the scope and you stifle vendors' creativity. And keep it too open-ended and you invite hidden fees, misunderstandings, and scope creep. Tension defines the gray territory. How ambiguity fuels hidden expenses. McKinsey points out that specification errors and lack of standardized templates rank among the top reasons organizations pay for unplanned add-ons or rework in procurement. In event planning, an RFP might simply say, provide all necessary AV equipment for 1,000 attendees, without listing microphone counts, staging dimensions, or whether specialized lighting is required. If this is going to be recorded for later, vendors might respond with minimal gear to keep initial quotes low. And then as your actual needs emerge, each item is an upgrade. So what looks nice on the onset isn't so nice. Examples abound. An F&B quote or a menu for 500 people that omits bar staff or an extended service hour. You only discover this 24 hours before the actual event, you're incurring premium staffing rates. Or a general service contractor, a GSC, for a trade show. It includes basic carpeting, but not padding. And because you realize this on site, you have to scramble to add it, and you pay an extra 30% on top due to just last minute labor. PwC analyzed large public procurement projects and found that 65% of cost overruns could be traced to specification gaps and contract variations requested after awarding. The same dynamic applies to an event RFP. If the scope is fuzzy, it leads to frequent or costly variations, and the vendors may be happy to charge more. Meanwhile, the event budget is the thing that suffers. Strategic flexibility, encouraging innovation and options. On the flip side, an overly rigid RFP might hamper potential cost savings or creative solutions from vendors. Some venues have unique approaches, maybe a more cost-effective drape solution or a digital signage format that slashes print costs. If your RFP is locked down to a narrow spec, the vendor might not suggest these innovative options. Government procurement experts found that if you micro-specify everything, you limit the vendor's chance to propose better processes or add-on services at a discount. Freed from constraints, vendors can tailor solutions to your event's real objectives. Some event managers put a contingency scope item in the RFP, stating that if certain conditions occur, such as attendance is 15% higher than expected, the price adjusts by a pre-negotiated formula. This acknowledges you can't perfectly predict final needs, but want to avoid reopening contract negotiation. This small measure of flexibility saves you from the dreaded surprise of, oh, by the way, that's an extra $5K. Balancing these extremes means specifying critical cost drivers like labor, major equipment, or standardized tasks. And you want to detail them, but leave a section for innovative proposals or contingencies to be included into there. As one corporate procurement manager said, we want enough structure to avoid hidden fees and scope creep, but not so much that we lose the chance for vendor ingenuity. An RFP can invite vendors to pitch alternative approaches or add-on bundles, but must still require them to line item each cost so that you as the planner can compare apples to apples and ensure that no hidden lines appear later. The key is clarity about what the must-haves are while allowing for an optional section for the value add or alternative proposals. McKinsey example, value leakage from incomplete supplier evaluations. McKinsey highlights that many organizations evaluate suppliers primarily on price, while overlooking service reliability or total cost of ownership, the TCO. They cite value leakage, that 3 to 4%, from failing to assess the bigger picture, like secondary fees, internal overhead, or risk of poor performance. To put it into event context, let's suppose that an event team is picking an AV supplier. They see a lower base price from vendor A and choose them to save budget. But they never asked about add-ons for wireless mics, the cost of the dedicated technician during the event, or overage hours, or if transportation costs are there. Those costs, they surface mid-event. Meanwhile, a competitor, vendor B, might have offered a white glove package for just slightly higher upfront costs, but included more coverage and fewer surcharges. By ignoring the TCO and focusing on a single figure, the event ended up paying more overall. The lesson? A thorough supplier evaluation, factoring in reliability, risk, and total costs. These can prevent disguised or unexpected expenses. Price alone is a narrow lens. For event planners, building a standard checklist for evaluating proposals ensures that you're not blindsided by half the real costs creeping in after signing. Ernst & Young example. Automation to reduce transactional hassles. According to Ernst & Young's internal case study on travel and expense optimization, they discovered that manual processes for booking flights and lodging led to frequent rate hikes. Also, missed deals and just employee frustration. By adopting an automated system, they cut 18 to 22% of ticket prices and freed staff from chasing last-minute approvals. For event planning, manual processes often mean retyping vendor quotes into spreadsheets, manually emailing RFPs, or retrieving separate PDF proposals. This not only consumes staff hours, but also opens up the opportunity for mistakes. I'm going to throw it out there. You're going to miss a key contract detail. You're going to forget to check an expiration date. If a team automates certain tasks, like generating RFP templates or collecting standardized vendor responses in a single tool, they can slash many hidden costs like staff labor, missed deadlines for deposit discounts, or a backlog of approvals. Freed from these busy work tasks, staff can devote energy to more strategic concerns like shaping the attendee experience or negotiating sponsor packages. So what's the lesson here? In our world of events, automation can involve e-sourcing platforms or contract management software that integrates with your finance department. Or to keep it super dead simple, just put it all onto a Google Doc with a standard template that folks are putting their information into directly. Instead of chasing down 20 PDF proposals, the system organizes them for you. If you're going the sophisticated route, which I would advocate for, they flag incomplete data and can send reminders automatically to slow responding vendors. And this lowers your chance of paying a premium for last minute fixes or being forced to accept subpar proposals because you don't have time to compare them. An event specific procurement example, the exhibitor onboarding pitfall. I want to talk about a specific case study here in the events world. A large trade association organizes an annual conference reliant on exhibitor fees. They discovered that 20% of exhibitors who participated once did not return, and they cited it from survey data to lack of clarity in booth setup fees and inconsistent instructions about required service vendors. And some exhibitors found they needed separate labor to handle inbound shipments and separate forklift fees, or a high-cost rigging fee for a tie-down because their booth went above the earthquake line. The association never spelled this out in the RFP or the exhibitor manual. Exhibitors felt nickel and dimed and complained that the final cost was 25% higher than expected. The impact for this is that 20% churn among first-timers represented a direct revenue loss for the association. Considering an event booth cost $3,000, losing 20 out of 100 new exhibitors was a $60,000 shortfall. Indirectly, the show also lost the potential word of mouth that these exhibitors might have provided if they had a positive experience. Procurement culprit. The association's own process for selecting general service contractors, GSCs, was sloppy. They used a vague RFP that never asked for a line item breakdown of labor, shipping, drayage, forklift usage, union labor, facility-specific verbiage to be included into the exhibitor pricing, or just where the communication was going to lie. Once the GSC's contract was awarded, additional fees arose, and the event team had minimal leverage to renegotiate. Exhibitors ended up shouldering those fees without prior knowledge. Because the association had no pipeline velocity tool or standard contract review, they signed quickly to lock in the GSC, inadvertently letting the GSC fill in the gray territory with extra fees and whatever they wanted. Now, you won't see this all the time because the GSC is looking out for their own relationship, but the lesson here is that if associations had a more robust vendor selection approach, one that demanded full transparency and itemized costs, they might have avoided these incremental add-ons. And they also could have inserted protective contract clauses ensuring that GSC's rates were all-inclusive, or that required a GSC to present any add-ons up front so that the association could communicate them to exhibitors. The consequences highlight how a single disorganized vendor contract can sabotage exhibitor satisfaction and reduce future show revenue. Best practices or modules to mitigate financial risks. Given all of this, association and corporate event planners would be wise to adopt a multi-pronged approach that eliminates inefficiencies, clarifies scope, and ensures quick pivots. Let's detail some recommended modules or practical steps. Module 1, centralize sourcing in a unified dashboard. Here's the why. To avoid fragmentation, missed deadlines, and data chaos. What you want to do here is use a dedicated sourcing platform or a shared project management tool, such as Monday.com or Asana, or specialized procurement software. And you want to log each vendor RFP, track who responded, timeline status, cost details, and next steps that are associated. Provide controlled access to relevant stakeholders, such as your finance and marketing teams. And in doing so, you'll avoid silos and repeated data entry. The expected outcome here is that staff see real-time progress and they can spot late or missing proposals. And they can swiftly compare pricing apples to apples. This reduces direct costs, and you can catch hidden fees earlier, and indirect costs, less staff time wasted searching for information. Module 2, pipeline velocity, tracking and alert system. This ensures that deals don't stall indefinitely and preventing lost opportunities or rush fees. What you want to do is define the RFP stages, such as issued, proposals received, negotiation, contract final, service delivery. I mean, there's a few other nuances there, but track the average days that each deal spends in each of those stages, and then set target times. Like negotiation should not last more than 10 days. And what you want to do too is create automated alerts if a deal remains in a stage past the target window. And this prompts immediate follow-up or triggers a fallback. For you guys that are relying on Google Docs to do this, what you can do is set up an automatic data validation. Maintain a scoreboard for this through total vendor deals, determining how many are on track versus behind, and potential cost risk if they are behind. The expected outcome for this is that stalled deals get flagged early, giving you time to pivot or escalate. And it reduces last-minute fiascos and premium charges for late planning. Module 3, itemized RFP templates with built-in flex points. The why for this one is to combat hidden fees while preserving vendor creativity. Here's how you do it. For major categories, such as the venue, GSC, F&B, AV, logistics, creative services, so on, do is develop an itemized cost, an RFP template, list required services like rigging, forklift cleaning, union labor, power, so that vendors must price them clearly. And in doing so, you want to include a flex proposal section. Encourage the vendor to suggest alternative cost-saving measures or enhancements. You also want to insert a contingency clause. Like if final attendance is plus or minus 10% for initial estimate, price adjusts by a pre-agreed formula. The expected outcome for this is that you get fewer unpleasant surprises. Vendors feel free to propose value-add ideas, but can't bury essential fees in broad disclaimers. You lock down major cost drivers while letting them be creative on the approach. Module 4, negotiation playbook and real-time collaboration. Here's the why for this one. Minimizing inefficiency in a vendor negotiation prevents indefinite haggling or scope creep. And here's how you do it. Predefine your must-haves versus nice-to-have items. Know where you can bend on budget or scope. Take from one bucket, put into the other. Require your internal teams, such as marketing and finance and the end users, to unify on a single consolidated feedback approach. This prevents contradictory requests that cause the vendor to revise proposals multiple times. Have them filtered through you or a central area. Conduct negotiations in a collaborative environment, like a shared document or sourcing tool, so that these changes are tracked in real time. But when you do that, make sure that there's enough time to be able to identify what the language is that you need to talk to each other through that document. You need to set a definitive timeline for negotiations too. For example, we will finalize or pivot by blank date, or we move on to another vendor. The expected outcome is that you'll reduce drawn out negotiations, keep your pipeline velocity high, and avoid signing suboptimal deals. And vendors respect deadlines if you enforce them consistently and are transparent about your next steps. Give them enough time to react. Module 5, supplier scorecards and preferred vendor ecosystem. Building trust and reliability means that fewer surprises pop up or reworks happen in the future. And here's how you do it. After each event, create a vendor scorecard. Did they stay within quoted cost? Were there hidden fees? Did they communicate promptly? Maintain a preferred vendor list that you revisit each year. Vendors with high reliability or unique value can be engaged early. And this also helps you standardize the RFP and potentially negotiate volume discounts if you use them across multiple events. Multi-year contracts. Encourage your vendors to share cost-saving ideas or improvements. And some organizations hold a post-event vendor summit to discuss what worked and where cost savings could happen next time. The expected outcome here is that over time, you form stronger partnerships that minimize friction. Partnership is the word to emphasize. Reduce risk of last-minute fees and encourage collaborative problem solving. Return business can also lead to negotiated discounts or more stable pricing. Module 6, continuous monitoring and post-mortem analysis. One-off fixes don't address the evolving event landscape. Here's how you tackle this. After the event, hold a comprehensive post-mortem. Compare actual spend versus budget in each category. Identify whether inefficiencies or scope creep contributed to overrun. If you're in a multi-year contract with any of your vendors, include them in the process. Let them know where things are going wrong so that they don't repeat that in the future. And you can work collaboratively together to walk that path forward for the next event. Evaluate the pipeline velocity data. Did deals close at the pace that you planned? Or where did bottlenecks occur? And if the event faced last-minute vendor changes or rush fees, determine if you can implement early triggers or standard contract clauses next time. Translate lessons learned into updated RFP templates or improved modules for procurement. And the expected outcome for doing all of this is that each event cycle yields best practices that refine your process. And by feeding data back into your system, you keep procurement agile and relevant, preventing the same mistakes from recurring toward a resilient and cost-efficient future. The impact of inefficient procurement in event planning is significant. It's encompassing both visible hits like penalty fees and hidden drains like staff overtime and missed discounts or flawed vendor choices. And as we've seen from McKinsey's analysis of value leakage and EY's success in automating processes, these losses can amount to 3 to 4% of total spend or more. It's a huge figure that can result in hundreds of thousands of dollars. How exhibitors and organizers both face rising costs, often accelerated by murky RFP language, indefinite negotiations, and disjointed internal approvals and authorization. Yet, solutions exist. A structured approach from centralizing your sourcing data into a single dashboard to measuring pipeline velocity. These position you to catch inefficiencies early and adapt swiftly. Clarity in RFPs combined with a healthy dose of flexibility for vendor innovation can strike that perfect balance between avoiding hidden fees and enabling new ideas. Meanwhile, standardized negotiation models build robust supplier relationships, and recurring post-event analysis ensures that your procurement strategy evolves with each show or meeting. Instead of repeating pitfalls, like discovering extra labor costs on the final invoice, you can embed cost transparency rules into future RFPs or incorporate well-defined contingencies that adapt to the shift of the actual event. And the bottom line here is that for associations and corporate planners, procurement is far more than an administrative step. It's the front line for controlling event finances, building beneficial vendor relationships, and ensuring that you can pivot on short notice when deals stall. Look, the only thing that's constant in our industry and in the world that we live in is that change is inevitable. Be ready for it. A well-managed pipeline fosters confidence. Vendors see that you're professional and prepared, and they respond in kind. Sponsors and exhibitors feel that you're stewarding event funds wisely, which encourages them to invest further. Attendees ultimately benefit when freed up budgets go toward engaging content for them, memorable experience, or top-tier production, rather than covering the cost of sloppy contracting. And if there's a single takeaway, it's that you cannot afford to ignore procurement inefficiencies. Whether you're an event manager juggling RFPs for a 50-person offsite or an association spearheading a 20,000-person annual convention, the lessons from consulting giants and real-world event examples are the same. Manage your procurement carefully and track every detail, and never let hidden fees or unclear terms sabotage your budget. or your event's success. By implementing the modules in your day-to-day operations, like centralizing data, automating tasks, clarifying RFPs, and measuring pipeline velocity, you pave the way for smoother vendor negotiations and cost savings that can be reinvested back into enhancing the attendee experience. In short, a resilient, cost-efficient future for event planning is within reach if we treat procurement as a strategic function, not an afterthought. With the right systems and culture of continuous improvement, event organizers can stop hemorrhaging money on rushed or vague deals. And in doing so, preserving the trust of sponsors and exhibitors and ultimately deliver higher impact for their events. And that's a win-win for everyone. The organization, its partners, and the attendees who will see that every dollar spent goes towards a richer, more engaging experience, not wasted overhead. If you haven't done so already, I would highly suggest you subscribe to the newsletter. You can find the link down below or go to alphatooth.com and find it there. Okay, look, we have worksheets and workbooks that go along with everything that we just talked about here. You're not in the woods wandering on your own. Lean on your friends. As always, worksheets are free. Download them, use them, steal them, swipe them, make them your own. They help you implement everything that we just talked about here. I want to see how you use them, how you steal them, how you make them your own. All right, with all of this, my objective for you is to take all of these items, put them into your work, put them into your day, put them into your event. What can you do with it? I want to see you change the world.